A road outside Jericho. The crowd is moving. It is a festival crowd. Thick, loud, pressing forward with the particular energy of people who have somewhere important to be. Jesus is at the center of it, and the people around him are close, jostling, trying to catch a word or a glance or a moment of proximity with the teacher from Galilee who has been turning the region upside down. And from the side of the road, a voice cuts through the noise. Son of David, have mercy on me. The crowd turns. There is a man sitting in the dirt by the roadside, blind, begging. His name is Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, and he has heard that Jesus of Nazareth is passing, and he has decided that this is his moment. He is not waiting for an introduction. He is not waiting for the right person to bring him forward. He is shouting, and the crowd does what crowds do. They tell him to be quiet. They tell him he is making a scene. They tell him, with the particular cruelty of people who consider themselves good, that this is not his moment, that Jesus is busy, that someone like him should not be interrupting someone like this. He shouts louder. And then, in a moment so simple, it almost does not register the first time you read it, Jesus stops, not slows down, not glances over, stops. The whole procession, the festival crowd, the disciples, all of it halted because one man on the side of the road refused to be quiet. We are going to come back to Bartimaeus because his story sits at the center of the pattern we are tracing today. A pattern that runs from a well in Samaria all the way to a hill outside Jerusalem, and one that, once you see it clearly, you will not be able to unsee. But before we get there, I need to tell you something about the last conversation Jesus had before he died. It was not with a disciple. It was not with a priest. It was not with anyone who had followed him or sat under his teaching or witnessed his miracles or understood who he was. The last person Jesus spoke to before he breathed his last, the final stop on the longest and hardest road he ever walked, was nobody. By every standard the world uses to decide who matters. We will get to who it was, but not yet. Because first, you need to understand the pattern. And the pattern starts much earlier, in a place that no respectable Jewish teacher in the first century would have gone at all. This is not a story about the worthy. This is not a story about the prepared. This is not a story about the people who had the right credentials, the right bloodline, the right religious standing to deserve the attention of God, walking around in human skin. This is a story about the ones he stopped for anyway. And what you are going to find, what I could not stop thinking about when I first mapped these stories side by side, is that the stops are never accidental. They are never polite. They are never convenient. Every single time Jesus stops for an outsider in the Gospels, he is interrupting something else. He is on his way somewhere. He has a destination. He has disciples to teach and crowds to address and a cross to walk toward. And he stops every time for the person the crowd is moving past. Pay attention to what that means, not just for them, for you. It is noon. That detail matters more than it might seem. In first century Palestinian culture, women came to the well in the morning, in groups, in the cool of the early day before the sun climbed. They came together because the well was a social space, a place for conversation, for community, for the ordinary rhythm of village life shared between neighbors. A woman coming to the well at noon, alone, is not doing it because she prefers the heat. She is avoiding people. We do not know her name. The Gospel of John never gives it to us. What John gives us instead is a portrait so specific, so unsparing, so fully drawn that by the time the conversation is over, You feel like you have known her for years. She is a Samaritan, which means she is the wrong ethnicity by Jewish standards, descended from the mixed population left behind after the Assyrian conquest, practicing a form of worship that Jerusalem considered corrupt and illegitimate. She has had 5 husbands. The man she is currently with is not her husband, and she is standing at a well in the middle of the day because the morning crowd, the respectable women, the ones whose lives have gone the way lives are supposed to go, is not a crowd she can face anymore. She has been walking to this well alone for long enough that it has become normal, and Jesus is sitting there when she arrives. Now here is what I need you to understand about this moment, and the historian Josephus documents this clearly in his account of Jewish-Samaritan relations in the 1st century. The hostility between these two groups was not casual. It was deep, old, and sometimes violent. Jewish pilgrims traveling between Galilee and Jerusalem routinely took the longer route around Samaria, adding days to their journey, specifically to avoid contact with Samaritans. There had been incidents. There was blood on this history. And John's gospel says something extraordinary about why Jesus went through Samaria at all. The Greek word is dei. It is translated he had to or it was necessary. But this is the same word used elsewhere in the Gospels for divine necessity, the theological must. The same word used when Jesus says the Son of Man must suffer, must be lifted up, must rise on the 3rd day. He had to go through Samaria, not because the map demanded it, because someone was waiting at a well at noon, alone, and the God who became human had an appointment he had no intention of missing. He speaks to her first, not she to him to her. A Jewish man speaking to a Samaritan woman, alone at a well. His disciples, when they return, are astonished. The text notes they were surprised he was talking with a woman, and none of them dared ask why, because they all knew why it was surprising. Every social boundary of the 1st century world said this conversation should not be happening. He asks her for water. She calls him on it immediately. How is it that you, a Jew, ask me, a Samaritan woman, for a drink? She is sharp. She is not cowed. She has probably been looked through by enough respectable people that she has stopped performing deference. And what follows is the longest one-on-one conversation Jesus has with anyone in all 4 Gospels, longer than Nicodemus, longer than any of the 12 disciples, longer than Pilate. The longest recorded conversation Jesus ever has is with a Samaritan woman at a noon well who has been married 5 times and is currently in a relationship that does not have a name she can use in public. He tells her things he has told almost no one. He tells her he is the Messiah, directly, without parable, without the careful ambiguity he uses almost everywhere else. I am he says, the one speaking to you. I am he, and she runs. She leaves her water jar, which is the detail that always gets me, because she came here to get water, and she forgets the water entirely. And she runs back into the city she has been hiding from. And she says to every person she passes, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. She becomes the first evangelist in John's gospel. The woman with the wrong ethnicity, the wrong history, the wrong hour, the wrong everything, sent to her own city. And the text says that many Samaritans from that city believed because of her testimony. The woman who had been avoiding people for long enough that noon at a well felt safer than mourning with the crowd, sent back to the crowd by the man who sat down specifically because she was coming. That is the first stop. Now, I want to take you to Capernaum. Capernaum is a fishing town on the northern shore of the Sea of Galilee. And in the 1st century, it is also a Roman administrative post, which means there is a centurion stationed there. a Roman officer commanding roughly 100 soldiers, responsible for keeping order, collecting taxes, enforcing the occupation. He is, by every measure, available to the Jewish community of Capernaum, the enemy, not a distant enemy, a present one. The man whose uniform means subjugation, whose authority means there is no appeal, whose soldiers walk your streets and remind you every single day that you are a conquered people. Josephus, in his account of Roman military administration in Galilee, describes the centurion class as the visible face of Roman power in local communities. The officer you saw, the one you dealt with, the one whose decisions shaped your daily life. This particular centurion has a servant who is dying. The Greek word used for the servant is pais, which can mean servant, but also boy or dear one. It carries a weight of affection that the more clinical word for slave does not. Something in the grammar of this story suggests this is not a transaction for the centurion. This is personal. Someone he cares about is dying and he does not know what to do, so he comes to Jesus. A Roman centurion, the occupier, the enforcer, the visible face of everything that has crushed this nation, walks to a Jewish teacher and asks for help. And here is what Jesus does not do. He does not pause. He does not consult his disciples. He does not raise the obvious objection that this man represents the empire that has ground Israel under its heel for a century. He does not ask the centurion to account for himself or his uniform or the system he represents. He says, "Shall I come and heal him?" Immediately, without hesitation. An offer to enter a Roman officer's house, which would have rendered Jesus ritually impure by the standards of Jewish law, made without a second thought. And the centurion says something that stops Jesus cold. "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof. Just say the word and my servant will be healed. I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one go, and he goes. I tell that one come, and he comes." He understands authority. He understands from his own experience of command that real power does not require proximity. He is telling Jesus, "I know what you are. I know how this works. You do not need to come. You just need to speak." Jesus turns to the crowd following him, the Jewish crowd, the home crowd, the people who have been with him since Galilee, and he says, "Truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith," the highest faith commendation in the Gospels, not to a rabbi, not to a scribe, not to one of the 12, to a Roman soldier. The servant is healed in that same hour. And the centurion goes back to his house, back to his uniform, back to his post, back to the world that made him the enemy, carrying something he did not have when he woke up that morning. Not just a healed servant, the knowledge that the teacher everyone was talking about had looked at him, at his uniform, at his nationality, at everything that should have disqualified him, and moved toward him anyway. I want you to notice something before we go any further. Look at who Jesus has stopped for so far. A Samaritan woman, wrong ethnicity, wrong gender, wrong history, wrong hour of the day. A Roman centurion, wrong nationality, wrong uniform, wrong side of the power structure that had been crushing Israel for a century. In both cases, the stop was not polite. It was not a brief acknowledgement. It was not a nod from a distance. It was a full, unhurried, completely committed encounter. The longest conversation in the Gospels. An immediate offer to enter a Roman officer's home. Jesus does not seem to have the right map, because the map that every respectable religious teacher of his era was using, the map that told you who deserved your attention and who did not, who was in and who was out, who was worth stopping for and who you kept walking past. That map does not appear anywhere in how he moves through the world. And we are only 2 stops in. If this pattern is landing for you, if you are starting to see something in these stories that feels relevant to your own life, I want you to do 2 things right now. First, if you have not subscribed yet, hit that button. Every week we go this deep into scripture, and you do not want to miss what is coming in the next few minutes. Second, drop a comment below and tell me, which outsider in this video feels most like your own story? We are not done yet, but start thinking about it. Because we have not talked about the woman who argued with Jesus and won. We have not talked about the 10 men who called out from a distance and the one who came back. We have not talked about the most hated man in Jericho climbing a tree just to catch a glimpse of a teacher passing through. And we have not gotten to the last stop. The one that happened not on a road, not beside a well, not outside a city gate, but on a cross. That is where we are going. Stay with me. She has no name in the text. Mark calls her a Greek, born in Syria and Phoenicia. Matthew calls her a Canaanite woman, which is the older, more charged term, the word that carries centuries of history between her people and Israel. Either way, the point is the same. She is a Gentile. She is outside the covenant. She has no claim on the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob by birth, by lineage, or by law. And she does not care. Her daughter is demon-possessed, and she has heard about Jesus. And she comes to him, and she falls at his feet, and she asks him to drive the demon out of her daughter. And Jesus says something that has troubled careful readers of this passage for 2,000 years. He says, "First, let the children eat all they want, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." This is the hardest line Jesus speaks in the Gospels. It is sharp. It is hierarchical. And on the surface, it sounds like exactly the kind of dismissal she was probably used to receiving from Jewish teachers of his era. The children, Israel, eat first. The dogs, the Gentiles, wait. Commentators have wrestled with this line for centuries. Some argue Jesus is testing her faith. Some argue he is using the diminutive form of the word, little dogs, house dogs, not street dogs, which softens it slightly. Some argue he is inviting the very response she gives him. But here's what matters most. It is not the line itself. It is what she does with it. She does not recoil. She does not apologize for being in the wrong place. She does not accept the hierarchy and retreat. She picks up the image Jesus gave her, and she turns it around. "Lord," she says, "even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs." She is not arguing against his framework. She is arguing from inside it. She is saying, "I am not asking for the whole loaf. I am not asking to sit at the table. I am asking for what falls on the floor. And you have enough for that." It is one of the most remarkable moments in the Gospels. And Jesus, the Son of God, the one before whom the disciples fall on their faces, the one the winds and waves obey, changes course. For this reply, he says, "You may go. The demon has left your daughter." She goes home and finds her daughter lying on the bed, the demon gone. Here is what I want you to hold on to from this story. She had no credentials. She had no lineage. She had no prior relationship, no letter of introduction, no respected person to vouch for her. She had a sick daughter and a refusal to take no for an answer. And that specific combination of desperation and audacity was enough. Not just enough. It was commended. The woman who would not be dismissed. The outsider who argued her way to a miracle. Now, I want to take you to a road somewhere between Samaria and Galilee. Jesus is traveling. And as he approaches a village, 10 men call out to him from a distance. They cannot come closer. They are legally forbidden to come closer. They are lepers, men with severe skin diseases, subject to the strict quarantine laws documented in the Mishnah, required under Mosaic law to live outside settlements, to wear torn clothing, to keep their hair disheveled, and to call out the word akathartos, unclean, unclean, as a warning to anyone who approached. They were not just sick, they were ceremonially excluded, cut off from the synagogue, from the temple, from their families, from every structure of community and belonging that made life in first century Jewish culture meaningful. They stand at the required distance and they shout, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." And Jesus tells them to go show themselves to the priests, which was the prescribed procedure for someone who had been healed of a skin disease, the official process for re-entry into the community. He tells them to go before anything visible has happened, before any of them can see or feel or verify that anything has changed. They go. And as they go, they are healed, all 10. But here is the part that matters. One of them, when he sees that he is healed, turns around. He comes back. He throws himself at Jesus' feet, face down in the dirt, and he thanks him. And he is a Samaritan. The text pauses on this. Jesus notices it too. Were not all 10 cleansed? He asks. Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner? 9 Jewish men, healed, clean, reinstated, running toward the priests in the temple and the families they have been separated from, do not come back. One Samaritan, an outsider, even within the outsider group, the one with the least claim on Jewish religious categories of gratitude, turns around. And Jesus says to him something the other 9 never hear. Rise and go. Your faith has made you well. The Greek word is sozo. It means saved, whole, complete. Not just the skin healed, the person restored. The other 9 got the healing. This one got something more, something that required coming back, something that only happened because the outsider turned around when the insiders kept walking. And now I want to bring you to Jericho. Jericho is an ancient city, one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, sitting in the Jordan Valley, lush and prosperous, a major stop on the trade route between the East and Jerusalem. And in this city, there is a man who is, without serious competition, the most despised person for miles. His name is Zacchaeus. He is the chief tax collector of Jericho. Not just a tax collector, the chief one. Which means he does not just collect taxes himself. He runs a network of collectors, taking a cut of every transaction, collaborating with the Roman occupation to extract money from his own people and skimming whatever extra the traffic will bear. The Roman system allowed it. Everyone knew it. And everyone, every merchant, every farmer, every tradesman in Jericho has been paying for it for years. He is also, the text notes, short in stature. I do not think Luke mentions this by accident. A powerful man being short in a culture that associated height with authority and dignity is the kind of detail that would have followed Zacchaeus everywhere. The short tax collector, the small man with the large house and the long list of enemies, the one who got rich by getting others to pay more than they owed. He wants to see Jesus, not meet him, not speak to him, just see him. The text is specific about this. He wants to catch a glimpse of the teacher everyone is talking about as he passes through Jericho. But the crowd is thick and he cannot see over it. So he does something that a man of his social standing, however corrupt, would have found genuinely humiliating. He runs ahead and climbs a sycamore tree, a grown man, the most powerful tax official in the region, sitting in a tree like a child, waiting for a teacher to pass underneath. The crowd, we can safely assume, notices, and then Jesus passes beneath the tree, and he stops, and he looks up, and he says Zacchaeus' name, not hey you, not come down from there. His name, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. The same word used in Samaria, DEI, must, divine necessity. Jesus does not say I would like to, or I am considering, or perhaps if you're available. He says I must, as if he has had this appointment on his calendar since before Zacchaeus was born. The crowd is furious. He has gone to be the guest of a sinner, they mutter. And they are not wrong about Zacchaeus. He is a sinner. He has taken money that was not his. He has made people poorer so he could be richer. He has chosen Rome over his own people for long enough that the choice has become his identity. But something happens at that dinner table that the text does not show us. We do not get the conversation. We do not get the meal. We get the before, Zacchaeus in the tree, the crowd muttering, and we get the after. Zacchaeus stands up and says, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount." 4 times. The law required 20% interest on fraudulent gains. Zacchaeus is offering 400%. He is not meeting the minimum. He is obliterating it. And Jesus says, today, salvation has come to this house. Not today, a tax collector reformed. Not today, a sinner cleaned up his act. Today, salvation has come to this house. Sozo, whole, restored, brought back inside something he had been outside of for so long that most people had stopped expecting him to return. The most hated man in Jericho, up a tree, called by name, taken to dinner by the same teacher who sat down at a noon well for the woman who was avoiding people, who offered to enter the home of the man whose uniform represented oppression, who stopped on a road for a Samaritan who turned back when 9 others kept walking. And we are not done yet, because the most remarkable stop, the one that breaks every remaining rule, is still coming, and it does not happen on a road. Go back to the road outside Jericho. We left a man there at the beginning of this video, sitting in the dirt by the roadside, shouting over a crowd that was trying to silence him. We need to go back to him now, because his story is not just another stop on the list. His story is the hinge, the moment where the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. His name is Bartimaeus, son of Timaeus, and he is blind. He sits by the road every day because the road is where the people are, and where the people are is where the money is. The small coins tossed to a beggar by travelers who feel a moment of generosity and then keep moving. This is his life. This is what his days are made of. Sitting in the dirt, hearing the world go past, existing at the absolute outer edge of first-century Jewish society. Because blindness in this culture was not just a physical condition, it carried a theological shadow. People assumed it meant something. People assumed you had done something, or your parents had done something to deserve it. He has been hearing his whole life that he is on the outside for a reason. And then, one day, the road gets louder than usual. He hears a crowd, not the ordinary traffic of travelers, but a festival crowd, dense and moving with purpose. And he asks someone nearby, what is happening? Jesus of Nazareth is passing by, and something ignites in Bartimaeus that the crowd is about to discover it cannot extinguish. He begins to shout, "Son of David, have mercy on me." The title he uses is not casual. Son of David is a messianic title. Bartimaeus is not just asking for a coin. He is not just asking for a healing. He is making a theological declaration from the side of the road, calling this teacher what the religious establishment in Jerusalem has been carefully avoiding calling him. And he is doing it at the top of his voice in a public place. The crowd turns on him. "Be quiet," they say. Many of them rebuke him. The text uses that word specifically. the same word used for silencing demons, for stopping storms. They are not just annoyed, they are trying to shut him down. They are telling him, with the full social weight of a crowd that has decided who matters and who does not, that this is not his moment. He shouts louder, "Son of David, have mercy on me." And here is the moment I want you to sit inside for just a second. Think about a busy city street, any city, the kind of street where 1,000 people are moving at once, earbuds in, eyes forward, late for something, part of the crowd that is going somewhere. And think about the person sitting on the pavement that everyone steps around. Not because they are cruel necessarily, because the crowd has a direction and a momentum, and stopping means going against both. Now think about the one person who stops, not glances, not tosses something without breaking stride, stops, fully, completely, turns toward the person everyone else is moving past, and gives them their complete, unhurried, undivided attention. That is what Jesus does. He stops the entire procession. The festival crowd, the disciples, the momentum of a road toward Jerusalem, everything halts. And he says, "Call him." And the crowd, the same crowd that was rebuking Bartimaeus 30 seconds ago, turns to him and says, "Cheer up, on your feet, he is calling you." Bartimaeus throws off his cloak. This detail matters. The cloak was his livelihood, the garment he spread on the ground to catch coins, the one possession a beggar in first century Jericho could not afford to lose. He throws it off without a second thought, and he comes to Jesus. And Jesus asks him a question he asks no one else in the Gospels. "What do you want me to do for you?" Not what is wrong with you, not what do you need, what do you want? The question treats Bartimaeus not as a problem to be assessed, but as a person with desires, an agency, and a voice that deserves to be heard on its own terms. "Rabbi," Bartimaeus says, "I want to see." "Go," Jesus says, "your faith has healed you." And immediately Bartimaeus receives his sight, and he follows Jesus on the road, not goes home, not returns to his place by the roadside, follows. The man who was sitting in the dirt, being silenced by a crowd, gets up and joins the procession. The outsider becomes a follower because one person stopped. Now I need to take you somewhere harder. The road from Jericho to Jerusalem climbs steeply, nearly 1,000 meters of elevation over about 20 miles, through rocky wilderness, exposed and punishing. Jesus walks it. He has been telling his disciples for chapters now what is waiting at the end of this road. They do not fully understand. They will not fully understand until it is over. He enters Jerusalem. The crowds shout, "Hosanna." He drives out the money changers. He teaches in the temple courts. He shares a final meal with his friends. He prays in a garden until his sweat falls like drops of blood. And then they come for him. By the time we reach the crucifixion, Jesus has been beaten, mocked, stripped, and nailed to a cross between two criminals on a hill outside the city walls. He is hours from death. Everything that could be taken from him has been taken. The disciples have scattered. The crowds that shouted Hosanna are gone. The religious leaders watch from a distance with satisfaction. The soldiers divide his clothing, and from the cross next to his, a voice speaks. One of the criminals crucified alongside him has been hurling insults. "If you are the Messiah, save yourself and us." The mockery of a man who is dying and has decided that cynicism is the only language left. But the other criminal turns. He rebukes the first one. "We are being punished justly," he says. "We are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong." And then he turns to Jesus. And here is what he does not say. He does not say, "I have lived a good life and been misunderstood." He does not say, "I deserve better than this." He does not make a case for himself. He does not ask to be taken down from the cross or healed or vindicated or given a second chance to go back and do things differently. He says, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. That is all. Remember me. Not fix me, not rescue me, not explain why any of this happened. Just when you get to wherever you are going, remember that I was here. Remember that I existed. Remember my name. And Jesus, nailed to a cross, hours from death, in the single most physically and spiritually devastating moment any human being has ever endured, stops, not with his feet. He cannot move his feet. He stops with his words. He interrupts his dying to make one more appointment, to honor one more outsider, to make one more declaration that the world's categories for who deserves attention do not apply here and never have. Truly I tell you, he says, today you will be with me in paradise. Not someday, not eventually, not after a period of rehabilitation or reflection or proving yourself. Today, this is the last stop. This is where the pattern that started at a noon well in Samaria, that ran through a Roman officer's request and a Gentile mother's argument and a leper's gratitude and a tax collector's tree and a blind man's refusal to be quiet. This is where it ends. Not on a road, not beside a well, not in a crowd, on a cross, between two criminals, in the last hours of his life. And now, go back to what I told you at the beginning. The last person Jesus spoke to before he died was not a disciple. It was not a priest. It was not anyone who had followed him or heard his sermons or witnessed his miracles. It was a thief, a man with no credentials, no history with Jesus, no claim on grace except the one he made with his last coherent breath. A man who had done nothing to earn what he was asking for and knew it, and asked anyway. A man who, by every standard the world uses to decide who matters, was exactly nobody. The last stop Jesus ever made for an outsider, because that is who he stops for. That is who he has always stopped for. And here is what I need you to understand, and I mean this with everything I have. The pattern does not stop at the cross. It does not end with the thief. It does not belong only to Samaritan women and Roman soldiers and blind beggars and reformed tax collectors and unnamed criminals. The God who had to go through Samaria because someone was waiting at a well. The God who stopped a procession for a man the crowd was silencing. The God who interrupted his own dying to make a promise to a thief. That God is still moving, still stopping, still turning toward the ones the world is stepping around. And if you are watching this today feeling like the person on the outside, feeling like the one the crowd is moving past, the one with the wrong history or the wrong background or the wrong everything, I need you to hear this. You are exactly who he stops for. You have always been exactly who he stops for. I want to leave you with three things. Three things I hope you carry out of this video and into whatever you are walking into this week. The first is this. Every person Jesus stopped for in these stories was someone the crowd was moving past. The Samaritan woman, the respectable people avoided. The Roman Centurion, the Jewish community resented. The Gentile mother, everyone expected him to dismiss. The lepers calling from a required distance. The tax collector up a tree that no one took seriously. The blind beggar the crowd was trying to silence. The thief on the cross that history would never have remembered. Not one of them had the right credentials. Not one of them came with a letter of introduction or a clean record or a reason the world would have recognized as sufficient. Every single one of them came with nothing but need, raw, undisguised, sometimes embarrassingly public need. And that was enough. That was always enough. Your worst moment is not a disqualification with Jesus. It is practically an introduction. That is the first thing. The second is this. There is a Greek word that appears twice in these stories, once in Samaria, once in Jericho, and it is the word DEEI, must, divine necessity. He had to go through Samaria. He must stay at Zacchaeus' house today. The same word used for the cross itself, the same grammatical weight, which means this. The stops were not impulse decisions. They were not accidents of proximity or moments of generosity that could just as easily have gone the other way. They were appointments, written into the itinerary before the journey began. The Samaritan woman waiting at a noon well, appointment. The blind man by the road outside Jericho, appointment. The thief on the cross with one coherent request left in him, appointment. The things that look like interruptions from the outside are not interruptions at all. They are the destination, which means, and I want you to sit with this, the moments in your life that feel like detours, like delays, like you have somehow ended up off the main road and cannot find your way back. Those moments are not outside his awareness. They are not the gaps between the important parts of your story. They may be exactly where he was heading all along. That is the second thing. And the third, the one I want you to carry longest, is this. Jesus made his last stop from a cross, not from a position of comfort or power or freedom of movement, nailed down, stripped of everything, hours from death, and he still stopped. He still turned. He still made the appointment. He still said today, not someday, not eventually, not when things are better and the circumstances are more appropriate, today. Which means there is no condition under which he stopped stopping. There is no depth of difficulty, no extremity of suffering, no moment so dark or so final that the pattern breaks. The cross is the proof. If he could stop there, if he could turn toward an unnamed thief in the last hours of his life and make a promise that is echoed for 2,000 years, then there is no place you can be that is too far outside the road for him to stop on. No desert too remote, no tree too high, no roadside too far from the center of the crowd, no cross too final. He stopped then, he stops now. And if you are the person in this video who has been feeling like the one on the outside, the wrong background, the wrong history, the wrong everything, I want you to remember Bartimaeus, the man the crowd was silencing, the man who threw off his cloak and came anyway, the man who got the question no one else got. What do you want me to do for you? That question is still being asked, not to the crowd, not to the people who already have everything together, to the one on the side of the road who refuses to stop shouting, to the one up the tree who just wants a glimpse, to the one on the cross with nothing left to offer but an honest request. To you, now, before you go, I want to know your answer to one question. Of all the outsiders we met today, the Samaritan woman at the well, the Roman Centurion, the Syrophoenician Mother who argued and won, the Samaritan leper who turned back when 9 others did not, Zacchaeus up his tree, Bartimaeus shouting over the crowd, the thief on the cross with one request left, which one felt most like your own story? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if someone in your life is sitting on the outside right now, if you know someone who has been told by the crowd to be quiet, someone who feels like they have the wrong history or the wrong everything to be worth stopping for, share this video with them today. Because the most important thing you might do for them is remind them that the crowd's verdict is not the final word. His is. And he is still stopping.